My name is Carolina Earl, and I'm part of the Graduate Institute Geneva's Young People's Working Group working on the Equals EU Digital Inclusion and Gender Equity Project. I'm here today with Carlotta, and we will be interviewing Anne, who we will dive into explaining and talking with very soon. So maybe Carlotta, if you'd like to introduce yourself, then we can begin with our interview today.
Hello everyone, I'm Carlotta. I'm also part of the Graduate Institute and the Young People Working Group working on Equals EU Innovation Camp, and I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you so much, Carlotta. Yes, Anne.
Hello, I'm Anne. I'm a part of the Equals EU program as a work package leader. So I'm leading the work package 3, which is all about an incubator program, which will happen after the innovation camps. So that's why I'm here today. So I think that sums it up, and we can go dive deeper into the details later.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Anne. So just as you said, we'll maybe start the interview talking a little bit. We'd like to demystify this concept of innovation and also understand where this Equals EU kind of innovation camp hackathon moment is driving towards, because then you'll take on all these incredible projects as the incubator leader. So maybe we can start with a little bit about you and then move a bit more deeply into what innovation looks like and why it really is a concept, a process which is open to everyone and anyone as well. So to begin with you, could you please tell us a little bit more about yourself, and in particular perhaps dive into this incredible role you have within the Equals EU project, please?
Yes, I will try that. I think I started this with just IT. So I started for about 5 years ago as an IT student, and I ended up with IT studies because every time I was bored, I ended up on Code Academy and this you learn how to code pages, but it wasn't really enough to be really good at coding. And I think I saw that as a sign, if you do this voluntarily when you're bored, maybe you should try to look into this in a more professional manner. So I started my bachelor studies, and we had this course called Universal Design of ICT. And the Universal Design of ICT is all about ensuring that everyone can use ICT, which is internet and communication technology. So everything we use, like phones, computers, tablets. There are so many new things coming also. So, everything that's digital. And as a part of that, I met Anthony Giannumis, who was the project leader of Equals EU when he started to initiate that. So we started a company to work on these matters, and we got the Equals EU project, and it was approved, which was really, really cool. And as a part of that, I ended up as a work package 3 leader. So for people who doesn't know about the project, Work Package 2 is all about innovation camps and hackathons. And the project will have 24 of them. So 12 hackathons, 12 innovation camps together. And we will have women-led startups coming out of those events. So they will be transferred over to me. And my goal here is to ensure that we can get all these great ideas and concepts into working products or services or whatever the groups have come up with. So I think that's how it started, sort of. I think I hit all the most important parts, and I guess we'll dive a bit deeper over the course of the interview.
Thank you so much, Anne. So that's perfect. And so maybe just a little bit more about yourself again. So you have, as you mentioned, expertise in universal design, human-computer interaction, and gender equality. So could you tell us a little bit more about your journey, maybe how and why you developed these interests as well? And
Yes, it's a good question, and I think I haven't actively thought about this myself. It sort of ended up as a path that I, sometimes if you go to the woods and you don't really know where you're going, so you just end up walking and you find a path that you feel like you belong to. I think I've always been really, to use a nice term, pissed off on equality and the fact that where you live, where you're born, your parents' background, there's a lot of factors that impact your chances in society. And I feel like that's so ridiculous. And I really want it to be an active change. I want to be the change so that when generations behind are, getting into technology or decide for an education, they won't see an IT field where there is 90% men. I want them to feel like they're welcome and I want everyone to have the same access. And especially since we're getting for them to be a part of the digital community. And I think the digital community will be so important for the future. And we can't afford to lose people, to not have them involved in that. So I think with everything equality, I think one of the reports from Equal CU says that we will not be equal until, in regards to gender, until 200 years. And I'm like, where where do we start? And I don't say that I can fix everything, but I want to try to be a part of something. So it's kind of like just wanting to see something happening. I have a niece that's 3 years old, and I really want her when when she's starting to pick education and general in life, when she grows up, I want her to have a better foundation than what I had. So I think yeah, it's tied with that basically.
And on a really similar note, and I feel like you already kind of answered to this, but
Yes.
maybe you can delve a bit deeper into that.
Yeah.
Could you please tell us about what gender equity and digital inclusion mean to you?
Yes, of course. And I think this is so. I read a book. It happens. I'm not a very avid reader, but it's called Invisible Women. And in the book, it says that as a woman, if you're in a car crash with men in the car, the possibility of you dying is higher. If a male surgeon operates you instead of a woman, you have a higher possibility of dying on the table. And I'm like, this is crazy. I have no other word for it because it's just I think we all used men as the one gender as the standard, but we're 50-50, why is one half of the population looked at us as a better standard? I wouldn't even say better, it's just that we need this conversation, and we have I think we've had the conversation for a long time. It's just that we need more people to listen, because it doesn't always help to just speak to the choir. You kind of like need active involvement also by stakeholders outside of the groups that are affected by inequality and equity. So yeah, I think like digital inclusion, and especially for women, just means that we are more equal in terms, and that we have, not even the same. I would like us to have better opportunities because we've been not prioritized for so long. It sounds maybe bad, but I think that's very speaking from the heart.
No, that's completely understandable, and I personally agree with you.
Yeah.
And as a build-up to this question, we would like to ask you why and in what ways is innovation important to forging gender equity and digital inclusion?
Yeah.
And what does innovation mean to you?
Yes. So innovation, I think it's sort of a buzzword. We hear it everywhere, but I think it's so like important to acknowledge that innovation is sort of how we got here. It's how I would say the first guys, back in the days who, oh, let's make a fire, that was innovation in its time. But I'm not sure if they actually went around and called it innovation. It's so I think like we look upon innovations, and I think like especially if you look in the tech scene, which is like AI and machine learning and really heavy technical stuff that happens. But creating a community that solves a new challenge is also innovation. But I think we're so like tied up to that innovation is tech. It doesn't have to be. And yeah, I have to not go too far away from the question, but to put it in short, if right now we have, especially in the digital scene, there are so many men. So I think it was the Fitbit tracker or the Google Health app. It took them a year to install a period tracker. And I'm like, it's a health app. Um, for half of the population, it's quite relevant. And why would it take you a year to install that? It should have been in the first iteration. But I think it's the fact that we have male dominance within whatever field it is means that the products developed will be produced for half of the population. and the other half will, I wouldn't say neglected, because that's a really tough word, but I would say less prioritized. And I think that innovation is really important, because I think the new ideas will spring out from a diversity of groups and intersectionality, and we need these topics, including driven by white straight men like Elon Musk, Facebook. There are a lot of guys who's doing a lot of stuff, and I really want to see more women in the scene, and not necessarily the tech scene, but everywhere. So yeah, I'm not sure if that was like all right, but I think, yeah, it's touching up on some of the topics that I think is really important.
Thank you so much, Anne. No, yeah, you're completely correct. And I think, like you're saying in particular, having, the people, women, minority genders designing their products and solutions is really important for changing this landscape, like you mentioned. And so I think that's a really great segue to maybe dive a little bit into innovation. We've obviously gestured to it, and you've given us a great overview of examples even. But I guess in particular, now that you are leader of the incredible incubation program, coming up for Equals EU, what advice would you give to someone who might be, participating in their first innovation camp or, first innovation process? We have this blue sky thinking ethos, at least here at the Graduate Institute, but is any and every idea really accepted? What is an incubation process? Could you kind of break down these words, these topics, these thoughts perhaps to someone like me, for example, diving into their first ever moment for innovation, in a sense, please?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, what is innovation? It's such a good question, because I think we call it innovation camps and hackathons. And I think the first thing that's so important to stress is that you don't have to be Steve Jobs to be a part of an innovation camp. You don't have to be anyone fancy. I think it's a nice way of saying, the people that we look up on is like, oh, they're really successful. And innovation camp for me is about knowledge exchange, first and foremost. It's about you getting into a room with usually a group of people you don't know, and it might be people you know, but I think the more diverse your group are, the more you will learn. And the more you learn, the more you will also most likely impact others' ability to learn about your experience. Because, I think even us here in this interview have three widely different experiences, lives, and, a different build up to where we are today. And if you use a phone, or if you've had to help someone use a phone, you have been able to identify challenges that comes with technology or the society. And if you have that ability to just think through, oh, this has been bugging me, this is something I'm really pissed off about, an app that doesn't work, or the mail system that's terrible, or a political system, and if you want to do something about it, I think you're a perfect fit for an innovation camp or an hackathon. So it's more about, in that phase where you talk with the groups and you do ideation, it's a super important part of the innovation camp, is that you all have ideas. And usually we don't look at ideas, but we look at challenges, because it doesn't help to have an idea unless there is a challenge. I think the only idea that I never realized was a challenge was like tablets. I never expected that I needed a bigger version of my phone, but not a computer. I think that's one of the few innovative stuff that I've been thinking, like, well, that was clever that I didn't know that I needed this. And they might have some problem issues that were the first statement when they started to develop the Padlet, but the tablet, sorry. But yeah, it's really interesting. So usually what I've been doing in my processes is just get the group to write down the challenges that they see, and you tell about them. And that sparks a process where others like, oh yeah, I've seen similar issues, maybe in different, situations or with different factors, but it's still this, like, you build off of each other's experiences, and eventually you start, okay, what problems do you really want to fix? And that engagement in wanting to fix something really gets you from A to B at an innovation camp. So you don't need a lot of specific innovation camp or hackathon experiences, as long as you're engaged and you have issues you want to solve, maybe not personal ones, but you know, some nice challenges that you really want to try to fix and find a solution to. I think an innovation camp and a hackathon is a great experience because you meet a lot of also other engaged people. And did I? So you need to tell me if there's anything you want me to iterate on, if that is.
That's perfect, Anne. Thank you so much for this incredibly comprehensive answer. And I think, you know, we're telling everyone who's out there listening and a bit wavering that, you know, this is really a process for them as well. The only thing that maybe
Yes.
you could then elucidate is, what is this incubation process? Perhaps that's another
Oh
term
yeah, that's
in this, you know,
yes.
moment in process, sorry, that would be great to hear your
Yes,
perspective on.
absolutely. No, it's just to, I think it's just easier to do this through a really short storytelling, which is I participated at a couple of hackathons and innovation camps. And usually you get there, you have an amazing time. Like seriously, innovation camps and hackathons are so fun. You are a bit high on adrenaline. So it's like getting that rush without having to jump out of a plane. So I love that because it's a bit more safe. And but I think a lot of the hackathons doesn't have a follow-up process. I'm not saying everyone, but a lot of them is like, let's meet, let's do some cool challenges, find some great solutions, and the ball is dropped. So, you know, whatever ideas and or even starting off products, because some build like MVPs, like minimal viable products during their or prototyping, just end up in a drawer, which I would say it's a shame for society and everyone, because I think a lot of these ideas really should be, you know, open in the light so that everyone can see them. So what the incubation process is about is to try to get that idea or concept or even the prototype to a minimal viable product within the process. So for our incubator program, we have 6 months available, and I am not doing this myself. I have 6 very great partners who is involved in like getting a program up and running. So it's sort of education without being education, because I don't want it to feel like, obviously, hopefully you will learn something, but it's more of a like, this is other mentors, people that have been working with innovation and entrepreneurship. They have walked the path. They know what pitfalls, you know, they've been in the forest before, and hopefully they'll see some pitfalls that you need to avoid. They see something, you know, advantages that you can use. So it's all about competence exchange, and that when you are getting your product or taking your concept from the innovation camp into the incubator program, we will run you through like each month with a new topic of focus, so that it will kind of like, you know, it's being in the kiddie pool for a bit longer until, and we try to like get you out of the kiddie pool into the ocean, and that you will have sort of a vessel that will at least make you float for hopefully, you know, a long lasting period. So it's all about just getting people that have a lot of competencies, give you the access to their knowledge, and also trying to figure out how can we best support you guys to get from that initial idea to a product that you can go out to customers or your, you know, businesses or whatever target group you have, and try to actually get it to a place where we can have it as a startup. And what's great about that is that if we achieve that, all our startups have to be women led. So imagine if we can get all those 24 ideas into solvable and sellable products. I think that we have at least started on fixing that very huge gap between men and women in innovation and entrepreneurship.
Thank you so
So
much.
it's
Thank you, Anne, for this. And I think you already touched on it as well, but I think the next question we had was, you know, would you agree that people's experiences and, you know, are the best and most important actually fuel for innovation? So, you know, why or why not is a techie expertise, let's say, particularly in the context of Equals EU, perhaps not all innovation camps out there, but especially in this innovation camp and hackathon phase, really, you know, a secondary concern to qualities like listening to others, being empathetic, expressing also someone's own concerns, and bringing those to the table in as safe as possible an environment. So yes, perhaps a little elucidation there, even though you have touched on it before, would be amazing.
That's so right. Yeah, no, I think like a lot of ideation happens when people feel safe, but a lot of good ideation also happens when you're really different. And I would say it's not necessarily common to have a very diverse group and have that feeling of safety. So I think what you need at a hackathon camp is to be open to listen to other experiences and be open that that's really different from yours, because then you will see the world from a bit different viewpoint than you have, and it might give you some ideas on how to try to solve the challenge in collaboration with somebody else. So it's not necessarily, as you said, like it's not about being really tech good, because you can be really tech good and have a great tech idea, but idea itself might suck. So it's, oh wow, it's really working well. Well, but if you're not addressing actual problems, and if you're not able to listen to your the group and the peers that you have, I think the outcome will lack. It will be like a lacking product, because someone in the group had the chance to be the leader and just push everyone away, and that doesn't really give a good scenario for innovation. So I think it's like sometimes listening is the best thing you can do, which is really ironic that I say this because I talk a lot during this interview. But I think in that process of an innovation camp and hackathon, sitting and listening to other people's experiences and not be that person who's like, no, it's not like that because I haven't experienced it. Just because you haven't experienced a problem doesn't mean it's non existent. It just means you're privileged and you didn't experience that challenge. So, that it's really important to be open and to be trusting each other is so important in that process, because that's when you really dare to tell people about the challenges you experience. And I think those challenges that are a bit hidden, or I would say even stigmatizing to talk about, that's where you can really make an impact. And it's those tough conversations that can really get you from A to B. I think one of the first innovation camp hackathons, I learned so much about the LGBT scene, and I knew challenges that I didn't see before. And I'm also part of that community, but I had another person's experiences with that type of topic, and it just led us into a great ideation, and we were able to see challenges, and we learned so much from each other that we ended up winning the hackathon. And the other team had a great technical solution, but it didn't really address a problem that they actually tried to address a lot of problems. So that's really hot tips before innovation camps and hackathons. Don't try to make I will fix every problem in the world solution. It will not work. Or I maybe it will work and I will be really surprised, but in a lot of use cases, fixing everything with one thing is usually you end up doing things very halfway instead of trying to do like one or two core things really good. So yeah, from a personal experience, I think that's where I really learned is when you have the ability to have diverse groups, have that feeling of trust and community, and that you all respect each other's experiences, and that you feel comfortable enough to talk about them, because that's when you really can get into the nitty-gritty details that will be a good foundation for ideation. So yeah.
Thank you so much. And I think this is the perfect opportunity actually to ask you about your own experience with innovation.
Yes.
And in particular, you are now, pardon for my language, but seasoned entrepreneur innovator. So you've come up against teams who may have ostensibly had more innovation experience than you. But you mentioned that often it was the wildest and most empathetic idea that took you further and allow you to design and create truly incredible and meaningful invention. So why is this? As you said, is the ability to listen, to empathize, and to express your needs the key to unlock truly brilliant ideas?
Yeah, no, it's I'm not sure if I have like the ultimate answer, but I think a lot of research have actually touched upon this. They looked into innovation and they did discover that diversity is great for innovation, but if you don't trust each other, those ideas will never see the day of light. Because let me just like, as an example, if I were here and I didn't trust you guys, I wouldn't feel freely to share my experiences. And a lot of those actual problems would be showed the light of the day and tried to tackle. I'm not saying that, and I think this is also really important, that it's not always that an innovation camp or the best solutions right away, but it can give you a starting point, so that you because innovation camps and hackathons are limited in time usually. So I don't think anyone being at a hackathon expects you to solve all our problems in those 24 hours, because then I would assume a lot of our problems would be solved because it would be easy. So I think the innovation camps hackathons are also challenging you to do look at challenges and problems that are impacted by so many factors. So you might be able to look at a tenth of that problem or one side of the problem and look at how you can solve that, but it doesn't mean you've solved everything else. And that's why we have the incubator program, so that you can get that starting of an idea. You can have those different experiences and that in the same room. But it also means that you have time to verify that this is a problem experienced by more than just you guys sitting at a table. I know you can do research at an innovation camp and find numbers, but when you're looking into trying to solve it with a solution, research is a vital part, and user involvement is super important. So, and I think one of the best ideas that we had was basically, it was a hack for health at ITU, which is the IT department to the United Nations. Yes, it's a lot of like fancy names, and I need to remember them correctly. We had one group that tried to solve all the medical challenges with an app. It's not a bad idea. It was just so you're trying to do a lot of things, but are you actually doing them in a good way, or are you just trying to solve all the problems with a really phone app? Doesn't necessarily mean it works for everybody. Whereas we wanted to use traditional storytelling and implement healthy habits like eating habits into those stories. So the idea was an interactive storytelling book where they would have stories for children that could be read by their parents or caretakers, and where you could read about traditional food, so that we would try to do like a sort of food change, because a lot of the unhealthy foods have taken a bigger place, and I think a lot of areas you kind of like lost that. Okay, what are our food traditions, and how can we ensure that the generations behind us have that access to that information? So it was basically an interactive storytelling book where that you can use on a smartphone or a tablet, because we know that smartphones and tablets are an increasingly digital scene that a lot of different socioeconomic groups have access to, because it's cheaper than a computer. So it was all about like trying to have fun stories, but that also was like, oh, do you want to make this fairy tales cupcake, or this traditional soup? It's kind of like, I think what we were able to do, and that we also wanted to do, was a challenge like gender stereotypes, because as we said in the pitch, I always identified more with the male guys in the Disney stories than the princesses, because they could always say it, and I'm like, well, I can say myself, I hope. So we're also talking about like how we can use this both to look at traditional foods and also to tackle the stereotypes that happens within gender. So I would definitely say that was a product based on empathy and storytelling and emotional, feelings of nostalgia, more than trying to solve your medical problems with an app. So it was a long answer, but
Yeah, it was a brilliant answer, and thank you so much for this precious information. We are really taking it all in, and we're really appreciating this.
It's my pleasure.
As a tiny build up, I would like to ask you if you would add any other qualities to this basically list you just basically identify for innovation.
Oh, this is a great question, because honestly, and this sounds really bad, I don't think it's the answer you're expecting. There is no top qualities, because in an innovation and in a group, you need the yes man, and you need the realistic person who's like, well, this might not work. You need the dreamer, and you need those who. I have friends who have these amazing ideas, and every time I meet them, like, let's do this, do this, do that, and it's all great, and I love it. And I'm more of the me being doesn't mean that I'm not good at innovation, because in that group of people, when you work towards something, you need a diversity, a group dynamic that can work. I think most people in the world have really, I would say, varied experience of group work, because I think we've all been in a group where things didn't work. I'm very surprised if anyone have been, if all their group works have been amazing. I would be fairly impressed, and I would love to talk to that person. So if you're out there, I would love to hear about that. But I think that's what's so brilliant about innovation, is that we need all the personas, because in that user group, we will have all the personas. I don't want you to think, at least this is what we're doing at our Innovation Camp Hackathon, we're not expecting everyone to go up on that stage and do a pitch, because we know that everyone isn't good or even likes pitching. And we don't need everybody to pitch, because we have those salespersons that are natural at selling, that do know how to connect with the audience. So why would you put, I'm going to be a bit like stereotypical here, why would you put Dan at the IT department to pitch, when you have I don't know, Annie at the sales department, who's doing a brilliant job of doing that. So I think, like, there is one thing though that you need to be when you're joining in a group, and I think that's sort of humble and open to other people's experiences. Because if you aren't that, you are sort of like a one-man show, and why would you sign up to do group work, which innovation is? So if you think you can tackle the challenges alone, and you think you have the best ideas, I hate to break to you, but the probability that someone might have a better idea than you, it's there. And I think being open to that other people's ideas are as good or even better than yours is really, really important. And lastly, being able to tackle criticism. One of the best innovation camps that I went to, our initial idea was slaughtered. Like, I'm saying that because we were literally like, this doesn't work because of that. This doesn't work for the user group. You're totally off. This is a useless product. You can toss it in the trash bag, and just like, you can go home. There's this sort of, it wasn't that level, but it wasn't on us personally. It was about the product. So instead of, obviously we were a bit surprised. It's the first time that I had that direct feedback ever. But what happened was that we went back to the writing board, we tear down all the initial drawings, and we started over. But we had the same product, but we were able to find the right user groups. We were able to find the right use case for the product. And the day after, during our pitching, we won the whole competition. And I'm like, wow, that's what really constructive criticism can do. But you just need to not, of course you can be surprised, and you can be like, oh wow, I just need a minute to collect myself and to figure out how to move next. But being able to listen to other people's experiences, and sometimes you get like lousy criticism, and that's all right. But this woman, the mentor, that she had some really, really, really interesting thoughts and ideas that we didn't think about, and she saw challenges that we had no idea about, and it better. So yeah, I would say, don't be a one-man show. You are a part of this as a group, and be able to tackle criticism without taking it personally, because the criticism isn't to criticize you, it's so that they can challenge you into creating better products and more relevant products. And you'll be happy with that when you pitch, because usually they have a Q&A from the jury, and it's a lot better to have those to have kind of like work through that in the mentoring session than getting those questions on the spot on the stage. So yeah.
Thank you so much.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank
It's
you.
my pleasure.
And also for, yes, telling us your stories as well, which is really useful to hear, and we
Yes, that's good.
So I guess finally, maybe, what are your,
Yeah.
bring it back to this innovation camp and equals EU, what are your utopic, maybe, dreams for the future of gender equity and digital inclusion? a little bit in the spirit of innovation and really pushing ourselves, to really be brave when we're kind of thinking about solutions and creativity. And then maybe
Yeah.
on the back of this or in this, what would you wish to say, taking all the incredible advice and experiences you've shared with us, what would you wish to say to a participant now entering our innovation process, hopefully?
Yes. I think the first my first wish, I dream, is that we see more women doing innovation or starting companies, anything related to economic and business development. That sounds really sad, but it's just because we are so lacking in numbers that I think the world are really missing our ideas. Like, we really need them. And I would also want investors, and I don't want this to be like I want this to be like, this is something I want to change. Investors happen to put more money on ideas coming from men than women, but that's something we also want to change by getting more female investors and women investors into the scene. So I think it's we haven't seen the start of the I would say like women female economy, because we're getting there. And I also want to like really tell people that innovation isn't always about 24/7 hustle. And it's really important for me to say that. I think Twitter, don't arrest me on this. I think Twitter or Reddit or some of the more bigger websites were made as a hobby project. Basically, people had the guys that started it, probably guys, it was IT. Sorry to say that, but they started doing this on their weekends. They had full jobs and they coded a bit here and there. And I want that to be translated to other fields as well. Whatever you do, if you have 2 hours to do something and to try to work on your idea, it's better than none hours, you know? So you don't have to like let everything go and dive deeply into what you want to innovate and end up bankrupt because it didn't work. Some ideas can also be made in your spare time. So don't feel overwhelmed or believe that you cannot do it. So I think that's really, really important. A lot of the really cool ideas that are out there started from a need. I want to just bring this person up because I think she's really inspiring. It's Martina Rothblatt. I hope I say her name correct. She's a transgender woman, and her daughter fell ill, or she was born with a disease that didn't have a medicine, and that was deadly at the time. Now we have medicine for that because she decided that I want my kid to live, so I will do active decisions and start to work on this so that I know that my daughter and other persons that have the same type of, I think it's illness or a syndrome, can actually have a long lasting life. And I think that just shows that innovative processes doesn't have to be connected up to the I want to be rich or I want to be the next. It can come from solving problems or wanting to make the world better or wanting to improve a situation for somebody. So I think if we can look back at this in 2023 and see that maybe 60% of all the ideas that are coming out of the incubator program ended up somewhere helping somebody or living its own life, I think that would be so great. My long-term utopic dream is that we see those numbers increasing in terms of women CEOs in tech businesses, in innovation entrepreneurship, that we are getting more money on equal terms than men, in the whole sphere. And the last thing, what I wish to say to participants now entering the innovation, I had no idea what I was getting myself into when I participated in the first innovation camp, I have to say. And I think I've been participating in maybe 10 of them, 10, 11, or yeah, closer to like what is it? Yeah, maybe like 10 to 15 innovation camp hackathons, both as participant, mentor, jury, you name it. And it don't be afraid, just do it. You might feel a bit uncomfortable at the beginning, but have this great image that I will send to you guys where it says like, this is my comfort zone and this is where the magic happens. So go there. The other participants are most likely as scared as you to meet new people and to join in processes they haven't done, but I think I can almost guarantee you'll have a great time. And if you don't, you have learned a lot. So I think it's an easy yes. And yeah, we can change our future. at least to some extent.
Thank you so much, Anne. That's the conclusion of our questions for you today. And thank you for taking us through the whole process, your stories and dreams as well. And I think that's a really beautiful note to end on. But of course, we'd like to ask, do you have any other thoughts or points that you'd like to raise perhaps before we wrap up? Or yeah.
I think that I now and 5 years ago is very different, and it's not because I've like changed personality or anything. It's just that I think innovation really opens up a scene where you meet new people, you do also networking. I would like to say that. So if you're going out in a professional career later, your innovation idea might not be good. That happens. I've not won hackathons as well, and I'm like, oh, what did I do wrong? What can I do better? But what I got from it was new LinkedIn contacts. I got to meet new people. You might meet your new best friend at an innovation camp or hackathon. And I think be open to the processes and be open to the experience. And maybe some of those you participated at a hackathon 2 years back might be your new colleague or professional contact that you can use later on. So I think I was more shy. I would definitely not say yes to this type of interview 5 years ago. So I would also say that I've been challenged in the way that I didn't dare to pitch the first couple of hackathons that I had. And eventually I was like, well, let's try to do it now. And yeah, it's just so nice for your development. And I can assure you, having innovation, and I think even equals EU at your CV and resume looks so good. And if you attend, you will get a certificate. So I think like there is no reason for not joining in, because you will just have that paper that says that I've been involved in innovation processes, and you learn a lot from it. Or a hackathon, which is also innovation, is just another name. So to put it short, don't be frightened by the name or that it sounds technical or advanced. Everyone can do innovation because you've had lived experiences. I think that's it.
Thank you so much, Anne. Carlotta, do you have anything else as well? Or
No, I just really want to thank you. That was brilliant, really brilliant, and really useful to
Thank you.
get to know better everything, and yes, get closer to the innovation camp for the end of April. So thank you so much.
Yeah, and I have to thank you guys as well. I feel honored to be reached out and to have this interview. I know there's so many other great people also in the Equals EU program, so I know that. But I really feel honored that I could share my experiences, and it's really cool. I to those listening and watching, sign up. You have nothing to lose.